Funding for the Hinckley Report is made possible in part by the George S. and Dolores Doré Eccles Foundation and the Cleone Peterson Eccles Endowment Fund.
Good evening and welcome to the Hinckley Report. I'm Jason Perry, director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Covering the week, we have Maura Carabello, president of the Exoro Group, Ben Winslow, reporter with Fox 13 News, and Rod Arquette, host of the Rod Arquette Show. So glad to have you all with us this evening. Let's jump right in. Ben, I'm going to start with you because this weekend, something because it's old but brand new in the way it's happening is occurring. The state conventions. Talk about what's happening there because this is all unique.
The most amazing conventions because you don't have to sit there for 6 to 8 hours unless you really want to. But basically this is political conventions that are going virtual. You think of parties the size of the Utah GOP where you have like 4,000, 4,500 delegates, and they're all crammed in an arena all day for a Saturday, everybody doing their civic duty. Coronavirus does not allow that to happen. So the arenas are gone and everything is online. Voting is open. Delegates are getting video speeches from all the candidates, and they can vote online in their pajamas. They're doing ranked choice voting, eliminating rounds of balloting. And if all goes well, knock on wood, you will see results Saturday afternoon, and we'll know who goes to a primary, who goes straight to the general. It's seen some success already in some of the county conventions. The head of the Utah Republican Party told me that Utah County GOP convention had 89% turnout, 89% support, which is phenomenal. And they managed to, move through this pretty quickly. Some people were in and out in 3 minutes.
All the counties are seeing these huge just rushes. The consequence of the state convention that we're seeing right now, two consequences, almost two different races. One are the three candidates who have already made the ballot through signature gathering. And what's their goal? Are they there to just show well? How much energy are they going to put into this? They already know they're on the primary ballot in June, if it stays to June. And then there's this other race going on for those who didn't gather signatures. And this is life or death for them. This is if they don't kick, and the possibilities there. So the question is, will we vote for three? Will we have a choice of 3 Republicans? Will we have a choice of 4? Or will we have a choice of 5 Republicans on the primary ballot?
What I think is interesting, Jason, and what I want to pick up on what Ben said about participation rate right now. What else have they got to do? I mean, you can't do anything else right now. So why not go to the state convention and be a delegate the way you should be? And I think what's going to be interesting is I've talked to most of the candidates over the past couple of weeks, and the challenge they face in these 5-minute speeches that they're allowed to do without a crowd in front of them, without the energy that you get from that crowd, and how well they're going to pull it off. And they said it's a challenge, but who comes across on a video is going to be extremely important here.
So true. And what's interesting about this too is these are occurring now. You can watch the videos even today heading into the weekend. Maura, I want you to talk about for a moment about this point that Ben brought up about this ranked choice voting, because that is what's interesting. The Republicans and the Democrats are both doing that in their convention. How do the candidates approach that process when what all you just said was right? There are no T-shirts this year. There are no balloons dropping like normal. It's just your video and what you've done up to this point.
Right, and I'm going to add to that, how do they handle ranked choice voting in the time of COVID, right? So ranked choice voting in and of itself has conventional wisdom, but how much are we following any conventional wisdom right now? So the dynamics that go on are conventional wisdom in a normal setting with ranked choice. It would tell you that those who appeal to most, and often that's defined as more moderate or broader agenda candidates, those do well in ranked choice because they're everyone's second or maybe everyone's third, and the combination lets them rise to the top. But where we are intentionally and part of the spirit of the moment is we're very focused on a few characteristics. We're very focused right now on who we're looking for from the lens of an emergency. And so how does that also, the immediacy we're feeling about our circumstances, how does that affect ranked choice voting? There are candidates, Birmingham, Hughes, Amy Winder Newton, they have been spending probably more time working the delegates, if you will, and trying to make their case, because those are the candidates that have to come out of convention to stand a chance to talk to the broader Republican audience in June. So I would say that usually at this point, I would be saying, no, the broader candidates, the Coxes and the Huntsmans, the moderate candidates would stand a healthy chance. Two factors make me want to hedge their bets. One is they're not as popular among sort of very traditional, very right Republicans. How much are those made up of the caucus from 2018? We're seeing some indications that some conservative legislators didn't make it out of their convention unscathed. So maybe that's an indication that people are looking a little more broadly. But I do think that what we'll see is this will favor a more traditional conservative Republican.
You know what I think?
But wasn't this the Mitt Romney delegates as well, though, that from the 2018? So wouldn't that lean toward a more moderate view?
So I would say that, but remember what has happened to those Mitt Romney delegates. I mean, Mitt Romney's path for me is still a little bit of a black box. How our beloved son, who I believe is taking very moderate positions that should be appealing to everybody, is just being beaten up about those moderate positions. And this is coming from his core party. So Ben, I agree with you. That's where my brain would go, unless I factor in the criticism that Romney has received from essentially this same group. Criticism, frankly, that I would mark as unwarranted. Nonetheless, he's been pretty beaten up lately.
Well,
Go ahead,
don't
Rod.
forget the veto vote. And the impeachment vote, I mean, that just has a very bad taste in those delegates. You know, the 4,500 of those delegates, it still has a very, very bad taste in their mouth. And that's why the Romney factor is an interesting to watch, like you pointed out, Maura. The other thing I find interesting about ranked choice voting is how would you like to be the candidate to run around and say, hey, I'm number 2, or hey, I'm number 3. I mean, Republicans for a long time and conservatives have been pushing for ranked choice voting, but there are some out there who are going, we don't know if we like this or not. So it's going to be real interesting to see how this is played out. A couple of cities in the state have already done it. The feedback has been fairly positive, but this is going to be so interesting to watch how this all works during this convention.
And the inverse will happen during the Democratic convention as well, because you'll see progressive candidates versus more Utah Democrat candidates vying for this same ranked system.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be the first time we can take a peek into it. So on Friday night when we're watching this, it started Thursday. It'll conclude on Saturday. And even if you're not a delegate, as Jason said at the top, you can go look at all the speeches. You can almost look at most of the information that the delegates are getting. If you go on the websites and start following social media, you'll have a glimpse into how they're making their decisions, what messages they're being given.
Ben, for just a moment, let's get to this question about the leadership in the time of a crisis, because I think that you are right. That is a theme, and it's certainly something the candidates are all talking about. And I want to just get your reaction, Ben, first on the poll that we just released last night, the Hinckley Institute with the Deseret News. And the question of Utah voters was, who do you trust most to lead in the time of crisis? And of the candidates for governor, Jon Huntsman came in at 26%, followed by Spencer Cox at 13%. Give your analysis on those, because those numbers are pretty high, much higher than the rest of the candidates.
Well, I think what you're seeing is people who have this sort of authority figure experience. And that poll indicates that people are trusting in the authority figures that are making these decisions. Jon Huntsman has been governor. He was an ambassador to Russia and China. And then Spencer Cox heading up the governor's COVID-19 task force and the response to all of this. So there's clearly some familiarity with what's going on. There's clearly some trust in the decisions that are being made. I believe you've also had some polling showing people are largely supportive of, some of the decisions that the state of Utah is making and the government is making in response to the pandemic. So I think that's what you're seeing is people are comfortable and familiar and agree with the decisions that are being made. And so then they attribute that to people who have been in these positions and do this. It's tough for some of these candidates who are not coming from that same background, that same level of background. So they're having to certainly do a lot more to get their name out there and to get their message out there.
Yeah. What I find interesting about it as well as you watch this over the last, since the governor endorsed Lieutenant Governor Cox, how the governor has tried to position him to lead a lot of these various committees and these commissions, because he knows he's got a battle with John Huntsman on the experience level. I mean, you've got a man who's been the governor here. He's been ambassador to China, ambassador to Russia, a lot of, real international experience. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking at as well.
Times of crisis, we know a couple of things happen, and we double down on them. We double down on familiarity. We go with people that we know. We go with familiarity. We also really want the government to succeed right now because it matters, right? And so we go with, and that's the experience factor. But the emotional connection to that is we really want the government to succeed. You see this playing out in Trump's numbers as well. Trump is getting high ratings for handling it, and then very low ratings as you talk about performance, which is a totally mixed message that many of us understand right now. We really want to support those in charge because that means we're taken care of. And so we really lean on familiarity, people we think have succeeded on our behalf, and we are inclined to want our government officials to be doing well right now.
Mm-hmm. I want to get to a couple other races that will be up in the convention. But Ben, just one thing, because I'm curious about your interactions with people. People are worried about lots of other things. How engaged are people in the political process right now? I'm just kind of curious, as you survey people, and I read all of your great tweets, and you're so connected there. How high is politics right now on the scheme of things, or is it completely connected?
I think it's all interconnected, and people that I talk to are certainly more hyper aware of what their government is doing to a level that, that I've never seen really before. I mean, I think about covering elections in previous cycles, and people were kind of, meh. And then, the legislative session comes around, and then there's a group that's, pretty engaged, but not really. And, oh, the legislature did what? And now it's, oh, they did what? And then, the engagement level is something else that we're seeing. People are more aware of the decisions that government makes that affects their livelihood, because people have been economically impacted. They've had their health impacted. People are more aware of how these systems work together and ultimately who pays for it, which is, of course, you, the taxpayer. So I have noticed just certainly a lot more awareness just overall. Whether or not that translates into active, voter participation, decision making, all of that remains to be seen. But that's one thing I have noticed is a definite increase. We even see that in terms of local news. We've seen an increase in viewership, people paying more attention to it, what is going on, especially because of this crisis.
I want to add to that, if I can. I think initially what we saw was people wanted to find out, first of all, what it is and how are we going to be protected? What do we need to do? I think we've moved from that phase now is to, okay, what are the solutions going to be? When can we get going back? We're in that very early stage, but I think we've gone through, what is it? How are you going to protect me? What do I need to do to protect myself? Now we're moving into this phase. Okay, I've done this for 5, 6, 7 weeks now. What are some of the solutions that I can return to a bit of normalcy, if that's at all possible, which I think it is.
And the additional perspective I would bring to this conversation is when you ask how interested people are in politics and public policy, and Ben rightly says very high, the only thing I would put is also rightly so when the conversation is about the pandemic and the economy and how it's affecting them. One interesting thing that we're working through with many of our clients who have important public policy issues that the state and the citizens need to know about, and in some of our clients' cases, issues that maybe are coming up for decision making in the fall of this year. Rightly so, the public has no interest in those right now. And so while it makes sense that we have no interest, from those of us who are having public conversations, we're in a bit of a quandary of how do we keep the public informed? How do we keep them up to date on issues that are not as consequential as the pandemic? And so while we understand and agree with the pecking order, it will make, like all of the choices we're making, when to open, when not to open, when to start having other conversations that will impact their lives but aren't about the pandemic, is also a public conversation or an experience we've never had before, and something we're trying to navigate.
As Ben said, the politics and the pandemic are interconnected right now. But I agree with you, Maura. You talk about the presidential race. No one really cares right now. I mean, they want to get this solved first. And that's where Joe Biden's got to be sitting there going, what do I do? Because he just is not getting any traction right now because people don't want to talk about that. They want to get their job back. They want to start enjoying life again. And until they do, I don't think they're going to focus on anything else.
Let's talk about a couple of these other races. Let's start with this one, Ben, a completely non-controversial race. Attorney General for the state of Utah.
Yeah, there has been a lot going on with that. It has turned into whisper campaigns that aren't so whispery, and you've got Sean Reyes and John Swallow and David Levitt, kind of in the mix here. And then you have on the Democratic side, Greg Skordas also jumping into the mix. And we haven't even gotten to the general election. Yeah. This isn't really an intra-party fight. It's just more of a fight.
Yeah, it's amazing to see this particular office so nasty, so quick.
Oh, it's had a history, though.
I was going to say, one, keep in mind, by definition, these are all attorneys coming to the plate, right? And then you have three people in Swallow, Skordas, and Reyes who this isn't their first rodeo in terms of the public arena and with each other. And so I think what all of us are interested in is if this is how you say hello, how does the conversation go from here?
So true. Skordas has got to be sitting back just enjoying this. I mean, he'll be the Democratic guy, and he's just got to be sitting back there. I'll get involved, but you know what? I'm just going to sit back and watch and enjoy this right now.
Okay. So the last race I want to talk about, because we'll be discussing it at the convention, is the 4th Congressional District. Maura, what are you hearing on that one? Because Ben McAdams, he still has an inter-party challenge with the Democrats, but how's that shaping up with his challenge from the right?
He does. I'm going to be bolder than I usually am with this one. So the question is, how many Republicans will he face? He's got several really legit contenders who have been talking to the delegates for a long time. As you say, McAdams has an inter-party fight as well. And here's my boldness. I think Ben McAdams has done a great job, and I think he's in as good of position as he's ever been in. I think he's in a better position than prior to the pandemic. And I think he will handle things very well and have an easier than expected match in the fall if you compare it to the matchup we were predicting 6-8 months ago.
I don't think that's a bold prediction at all, Maura. I agree with you. I think he is in pretty good shape. I don't think he's done anything to anger anybody, except the real conservative Republicans there, but he's stayed fairly moderate. The Republicans, like they always do, are going to try and align him with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and that crowd. But I think Utah voters have said, he's done an okay job. He's done nothing really to upset us that much. So I think the Republicans have got a real challenge on their hands to get him out of office.
But you don't think that impeachment vote's going to come back to haunt him?
No, I don't think it will for him. I don't think it will for him. I think in Romney's case, because Trump loves to get after Romney every chance he can. He did the other day by not putting him on this commission and says, I don't care about his advice. I think McAdams is safer than a lot of people think he is.
Rod mentioned this during the Biden conversation, but what got interrupted? What's interrupted now is the runway where you start taking shots at the incumbent, right?
Yep.
And we're not doing that right now. So where normally right now the Republicans would be putting out early ads, sending messages, reminding us of impeachment, reminding us Nancy Pelosi, reminding us of all the things we feel about national Democrats. That's been interrupted. And so he's going to go through it. I think the big test for Ben is how long he keeps his COVID beard and what he looks like on the outside of that.
Okay. Ben, another big thing happening is the special session. This happening today and tomorrow. I'm sure this is not going to be a weekly thing, although it turns out to be.
This may be the longest running reality show we have ever seen. It is the most special of the special sessions. They've got a lot to deal with. The coronavirus pandemic is affecting everything. You've got to figure out how to spend federal funds. You've got to salvage the economy. You've got to deal with the public health crisis. And the legislature utilized its powers to call itself into a special session. That's what's going on. This has been fascinating to watch from home even, because it's all virtual. Everybody's on a call like we're on right now, and this conference thing, and discussing and passing bills because they can't social distance in the chambers. It's just out of control like that because they can't be physically within proximity of each other. And so they're having to pass these bills through at a very rapid pace, conducting the business of the legislature, which sometimes can be very slow, in a way that's very quick. And we're going to have multiple special sessions. We've got the one that ends Thursday afternoon, resumes with the governor's special session to deal with more budgetary issues, because it turns out that when the legislature calls themselves into special session, there's limits to that. And so now you have to have the governor involved again. And we may be back again in June as we continue to deal with economic impact. This is unbelievable. This is wild to just watch play out.
Well, I think what's interesting on top of that, and the story getting a lot of attention today nationally, is Mitch McConnell's comments about we aren't going to use federal money to bail out states that are in financial trouble. And I think Utah can sit back and say, we're in a lot better shape than Illinois, New Jersey. And I think Utah lawmakers are sitting back in a little bit more comfortable financial situation, even though we do have some challenges, than those other states. And that's going to be a national debate. What does the federal government do to bail out states who are economically in really financial trouble with the pensions and everything like that? Utah has built up that rainy day fund. How long it's going to last, nobody knows. But at least we're in a little bit better shape.
But the Senate president told me they have a rainy day fund, but what they really need right now is a monsoon fund.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And right now, an important conversation that's going to go on in the special sessions that many of us see on a call happening every 2 to 4 weeks for the next several weeks is, in May and June are the times that the cities and towns make their budgets, and those budgets are contingent and reliant on the state budget. Well, the state budget is being moved right now. The state budget is being reconsidered based on the fewer taxes that we've collected. And right now, the cities are petitioning the legislature to give them some indications, but also give them some runway to work with their local budget, because we forget the trickle down. These cities and county budgets are enormously important to us. And at this same time, an incredible dynamic is going on that I have never seen in my history, which is an attempt to consolidate and focus power with the legislative body. I've been really surprised that the executive branch, I have to say, I've been really surprised that Herbert Cox has not, that administration has not been a little more clear about pushing back on the legislature. I've been surprised the gubernatorial candidates have not expressed concern more about a movement to really increase the power of the legislature. As Ben said, this is the first session that they've been able to call themselves. And while they dealt a lot with COVID, they were able to squeak in a lot of other non-COVID issues here. And I think something we should all be reading for between the lines and looking for the coverage on is where power should be balanced. And when I say consolidating power, in Utah, we often personalize that and we say, but we like that guy. And I would just suggest that that's not the issue. The issue is not whether you like the leader. The issue is how these branches cooperate and make decisions. And I think this moving and consolidation to legislative power is incredibly dangerous and not in the interest of the public.
Rod, let's talk about that consolidation of power a little bit in the reopening of the economy, because it is quite unique that we have a special session called by the governor and the legislature calling themselves into special session right after each other. But there is a theme on this with some of these pandemic issues. The governor is getting a lot of pressure, as is our legislature, to open up the economy. How are they handling that? And is that why they're working together maybe a little bit? I'm not sure, because some kind of effort's happening.
Well, there is pressure on there, and you've got that commission that has released its report, that was put together with Jeff Burton and Dan Hemmert and all these various lawmakers. There is mounting pressure, I think, on everybody to, like I brought up earlier, what's the solution and how do we get this back on? I mean, everybody talks about, throwing the light switch. Well, you can't do that. It's more of a dimmer switch that we're having to open just a little bit each and every day and to see how it goes. And I think that's where they need to work together, because if you had division, it would be a real problem. And I want to go back to the control. This is something I go back to the days of Greg Hughes when he was speaker, and he argued, why don't I have a right as a lawmaker to call a special session. It was left up to the governor for a long, long time. Well, that's changed. And that's where you're seeing the legislature starting to exert a little bit of the authority that they've now given themselves.
Mm-hmm. We have just a moment. One of the things I want to address, because Utah has a chance now, Ben, what you're following here is this Healthy Together app, something we can download and we can start being followed a little bit. Tell us what that is and the pros and cons in the last minute we have here.
Well, this app certainly has a lot of potential. It does what health officials do already manually with contact tracing, where they get in touch with someone, say, you may have been exposed, we need to figure out, or you've tested positive, we need to figure out where you've been for the last 14 days. This makes it digital. It traces everything where you've been. It uses GPS and Bluetooth technology, has access to your contacts, that kind of thing. It is securely used through health department data. It's given to the health department, and the app makers say that you have total control over your data. You can delete it at any time. You can set permissions, those things. But it is a level of privacy that you don't have. This takes it to a new level. And the state has certainly faced a lot of scrutiny over how it deals with these types of privacy issues and surveillance type apps. So, but civil libertarian groups that I've talked to say that they're actually okay with it because it's voluntary right now.
Yeah, we're watching that closely. Totally voluntary. They say you can do it. I guess there are pros and cons for that one. So we'll watch that one pretty closely. Thank you for your great insights and preparing us, not just for the state convention, but also for the special sessions. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching the Hinckley Report. This show is also available as a podcast on pbsutah.org/Hinckley Report or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next week. Be safe.